a longtime listener of this program studied catastrophes, and he said that there's no natural catastrophes. Nature happens. The catastrophes happen when we as a society are incapable or have done things that make us more vulnerable to these things than we should be. And, you know, over time you learn we don't build on marshes. We don't build on floodplains. But we also measure, we know how great a flood it's going to be, and we build commensurate to that. You don't build buildings in an earthquake zone unless you have built them in a way to sustain earthquakes. And there are other places where, you know, there are buildings that you can build in parts of the country that don't get hit by tornadoes or hurricanes on a regular basis that you can't build in other areas. And what we're dealing with now is a multi-pronged catastrophe. One being that things like this are going to happen more and more and more because of climate change. Can we say there's a one-to-one relationship between this and climate change? Probably not, but we could probably say that there's a 1 to 7/8 relationship. Because the odds of these 1 in 1,000, 1 in 100 year weather events begin to happen more and more and more, and don't become 1 in 100 years or 1 in 1,000 years. They end up becoming 1 in 50 years, 1 in 25 years, 1 in 15 years, et cetera, et cetera.
We heard this about the Los Angeles fires. Yep. Oh gosh, this is once in a century, and that's clearly not the case. Yeah, it's flooding here, but of course we're going to have increased intensity of wildfires and more flooding, and hurricane season hasn't even hit.
And the other aspect of that is the level of preparedness that we have for these things. And to be clear, you know, I've talked about this dynamic. 80% of healthcare costs are borne out by 20% of the people. There's also a dynamic where if you're going to protect 80 people from dying in Texas, you're not going to be able to pick and choose where around the country those 80 people might be vulnerable. Oh, it's Texas. It's on this river. Oh, it's in Kansas on this tornado alley. It's going to be inefficient to protect people because you're going to be paying essentially like insurance. You're going to be paying to avoid the worst case scenario, and it very well may not happen in that one area in which you're paying for it. And the only way that you know is if you're paying for all the areas. Here are the local officials speaking about why campsites were not evacuated. Now, again, this happened very quick, but listen to this.
So we can recover those funds. So yes, it is a full operation.
Mr. Rice,
One more question.
Yeah, well, one of the questions that still hasn't been answered 3 days into this is despite TDEM's warning on July 2nd and July 3rd that something like this could have happened, that the threat existed, why that information didn't get down to the camps and why they weren't evacuated. Can you answer that now?
That is a great question, but again, we want to make sure that we continue to focus. We still have 11 missing children that we want to get reunited with their families. Until we can get reunited with our families.
But was that a breakdown of communication?
We are not going to stop until we do. So,
but sir, there are a lot of families.
Question, sir, was any emergency alert given out on the 4th that morning? Did anyone?
Sir, there are families who deserve better than that.
Gosh, that reminds me so much of the Uvalde fallout and the complete down in Texas passing off of responsibility from official to official until basically the families had to be satiated with the horrible response that they got.
At other points, those same officials were talking about there was a failure to hear from the National Weather Service to predict this. This is a clip. We played this clip a month and a half ago, when it first happened. This is a South Florida weatherman. This is in early June, and he is basically warning his audience that he's not going to be able to do his job in the way that they have come to expect him to do it, because he relied on the National Weather Service in a way that he realized he could not rely on anymore.
Right? When is it going to turn? John, it's not turning. It's coming straight to us. It's going to turn. All right? The turn was never forecast to be on Sunday. The turn isn't even on Monday morning. The turn will come Monday afternoon, Monday evening, into Tuesday. Remember that? That was about 6 years ago. That was Hurricane Dorian, as it was absolutely devastating the northwest Bahamas as a Category 5, sat over that region for 2 days. It was headed straight west. Lots of people in Florida were concerned the hurricane was heading here. And as you've grown accustomed to my presentations over my 34 years in South Florida newscasts, confidently, I went on TV and I told you, it's going to turn. You don't need to worry. It is going to turn. And I am here to tell you that I'm not sure I can do that this year, because of the cuts, the gutting, the sledgehammer attack on science in general, and I could talk about that for a long, long time, and how that is affecting the U.S. Leadership in science over many years, and how we're losing that leadership, and this is a multi-generational impact on science in this country, all right? But specifically, let's talk about the federal government cuts to the National Weather Service and to NOAA. Did you know that Central and South Florida National Weather Service offices are currently basically 20 to 40% understaffed? From Tampa to Key West, including the Miami office, 20 to 40% understaffed. Now, this type of staffing shortage is having impacts across the nation, because there's been a nearly 20% reduction in weather balloon releases, launches, that carry those radio
sounds. All right, we don't need to see the whole thing, but you get the point here.
The quality of the forecasts is becoming...
The point here, of course, is that it makes a difference. What happens with the National Weather Service to local predictions of what's going to happen? Here is a clip. This is in the, this is the one I put in the, yeah. Here's a clip that outlines the cuts to the local area National Weather Service offices in Texas.
The head of local weather warnings will take an early retirement as cuts happen to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, better known as NOAA. The last day for the warning coordination meteorologist Paul Ura is April 30th. He coordinates the warning function of his office and is in charge of the Skywarn program, spotter training, and sharing information with the community. Ura's retirement is part of an early retirement package offered to National Weather Service employees. He's worked with the service for 32 years and spent more than half that time at the office in Austin, San Antonio. Let's bring in our chief meteorologist, Nick Bannon, now. And Nick, help us understand what this means for you and many people out there in the community.
Yeah, more than any other meteorologist at our local National Weather Service Austin, San Antonio office, we work with Paul more than anybody else. He is a great segue between the studies and the forecasting that the National Weather Service does, as well as the warnings and watches that they put out. And he is a great connector to the media so that we can follow along with their thinking. We can help pass along those important warnings to you at home. And as he leads the warning section of the National Weather Service, he, of course, plays a big role in determining issuance of watches and especially warnings in the local area. Even though the Storm Prediction Center do the watches, they do coordinate with local National Weather Service on the watches eventually, and then the warnings are distributed by our local National Weather Service office. But more importantly than his job description is his experience. He's been working with the National Weather Service for 32 years, as you mentioned, and more than half of that time in our local office. And
all right,
and his position.
Can we say with 100% certainty that if these cuts, these slashing that had not happened on the national level by DOGE and by the Trump administration,
Project 2025.
Project 2025 lays it out.
Like, Rust vote's still there. There's a lot of, I think the press is focusing on DOGE a lot, which they should, but Elon Musk is out of the administration now. Rust vote and Project 2025, they're executing this currently.
They are currently doing this, and I think we may have even like a tweet in the, I think it's page 674 off the top of my head, if I recall correctly, where Project 2025 talks about these cuts because these agencies promote the idea that climate change is real and that we can do something about climate change. Now, at the very least, what agencies like this do in terms of climate change is acknowledge its existence and say we have to change the way that we live. Now, ultimately, the problem is that when climate change becomes more and more extreme, the options available to us in how we are to live become narrower and narrower. You can't live in Miami because it's underwater.
Yep.
You can't rely on certain foods because there's not enough farmland that is, capable of providing this food. You can't live in this area because of the storms. New York Times reported more on those cuts. According to the New York Times, the San Angelo office of the National Weather Service was lacking a senior hydrologist, staff forecaster, and a top meteorologist. The nearby San Antonio office also had vacancies for a warning coordination meteorologist and science officer, roles that are designed to work with local officials to plan for floods. Times reports that the warning coordination meteorologist left after taking early retirement, an offer that the Trump administration had used across the agencies to try and shed staff. We just saw that news report. Times also reports that while some open roles may predate the current administration, the current vacancy rates at both the San Antonio and San Angelo and National Weather Service offices are roughly double what they were in January. I mean,
that would make sense, right? Like, the numbers are 24,000 employees at NOAA that were fired, reinstated, then refired. And that's just that one agency.
And the bottom line is this. The Republicans have never cared about climate change. They have deployed all sorts of different things to argue that it doesn't exist, then to argue that it's not man-made, then to argue that technology is going to take care of it. At the end of the day, it is because they do not believe it is the role of government to protect its citizens. That's it. They don't believe that. It's inefficient because, yes, of course it's inefficient. We don't know where the next flash flood is, which is why you need forecasters and warning systems in areas where you may never use them. We haven't used this warning system in 50 years. What's the point of it? I mean, this is fundamentally the ideology that they have. And you can see it across the board. That is how they can go and kick millions of people off of Medicaid. There's gonna be $500 million worth of, $500 billion worth of cuts to Medicare over the course of the next 10 years. This is how they can kick millions of people off of food assistance. is because they fundamentally do not believe that it is the role of government to protect its citizenry. Period. End of story. They just don't believe that's the function of government. What they think the function of government is to have a massive military that puts money into their benefactors' pockets, and to have any other government expenditure that puts money into their government, benefactors' pockets. That's it. There's no other explanation. While every single Republican minus two, Massey, who has a libertarian ideology about, he thinks it should be even less. The government should take care of people. And Fitzpatrick, who's in a purple district in Pennsylvania, and if his vote was needed, I guarantee you he would have voted for it. This is the dynamic. There is no question about this. They're gonna hopes and prayers. Sorry about your kids. It's the same thing with COVID. Same thing with Medicare. Same thing with Medicaid. Same thing with SNAP. Same thing with college loans. It just goes on and on and on. That's it.
Trump said they're going to get rid of FEMA by the end of the year.
States can take care of it. They don't have the ability to tax. They don't have the ability to deficit spend. That's it. All right, we'll go through more aspects of that bill in just a second. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.
Guess we're trying out. Full Morena build. Oh god. I've literally never seen it go off like that. Didn't know the game dropped it like that. Wow. Alright. fucking raining. Aqua Tarkus. You'll find on inspection that it was a worthy reference. See you later.